support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, and those following via social media and members of the media. Welcome to this public meeting number 22 of today, Thursday, August 25th, 2022. I would like to give a special welcome to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Dr. Rudolph Samuel, and his support staff. We have established a quorum of 10 members. Please let's stand for a moment of silence. I've received notice of absence from the following members of Parliament: MP William Marlin, MP Sihat Bijlani. Is there any member of Parliament that wishes to have the floor for notification? MP Bryson? Yes? Yes, MP Bryson.
Just a notification from MP Arundel that he won't be able to make it.
Noted. Any other member of Parliament that wishes to have the floor for notification? No? I heard no. Okay. We have as agenda point for this urgent public meeting, agenda point 1, insight and discussion into the role and authority of the Ministry of Education with regards to religious and other alternative school boards on St. Martin. And agenda point 2, process regarding reporting of the incidents involving school authority figures and students in the Ministry of ECYS. This can be found under IS 1199. Parliamentary year 2021-2022, dated August 16, 2022. And this meeting was requested by MP Melissa Gums, MP Rayan Peterson, and MP Solange Duncan.
Proposal of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, MP Gums, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, good afternoon to you, my colleagues, to the Minister and his support staff, and to those joining us. Madam Chair, I apologize. I had intended to request of you earlier this week to combine these two agenda points. After reviewing and conferring with the co-requesters, they are quite similar. So I would like to propose that we combine the two of them for the duration of this meeting. That way the Minister can just go through the presentation and take all questions at one time.
Thank you,
Madam
MP
Chair.
Gums. MP, is there any support to MP Gums' request? I see there. And we will now put this to an, that's enough? Okay. I was about to put it to a vote. Okay, good. So then let's go over to both agenda points. Then on August 16, 2022, Parliament received a letter from the members of Parliament, MP Gums, MP Peterson, and MP Duncan, requesting that an urgent meeting of Parliament be convened regarding receiving insight and having a discussion into the role and authority of the Ministry of Education with regards to the religious and other alternative schools on boards on St. Martin, and the process regarding reporting incidents involving school authority figures and the students of the Ministry of ECYS. The presence of the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports was requested, hence this meeting. At this time, I would like to give the floor to the Minister of ECYS for his opening remarks and presentation. Minister Samuel, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. And thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to the Khifir. Good afternoon also to the members of Parliament. Good afternoon to the media and the people of St. Martin. Madam Chair, I have with me here this afternoon as supporting staff, to my right, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports. I also have to my left the head of the Division of Inspection of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, and I also have the Policy Officer of the Department of Education, Ms. Deidre Spratt. Madam Chair, this afternoon I will make a presentation in regards to the agenda that is on the table, and I would like to state up front, I believe this is the first time in the history of St. Martin politics that I know of that such a case or such a situation, such a meeting is on the floor of Parliament. And why I say that, because it has two agenda points, and I know that one of the agenda points are specifically related to a situation that allegedly took place in a school. Now, this is no easy matter. This is not any good matter. This is something that we in St. Martin and I as Minister of Education will definitely not like to have happen. And while I would do my best to make sure that this situation comes to a good solution, a amicable solution, a solution that the people of St. Martin and all of us would understand what took place or what didn't took place, I will always stay within the boundaries of the law. And this does not take away the fact that Minister caring, Minister understanding about the case is not in place. I do understand the sensitivity of it. I understand that it isn't something that is easy to talk about. I understand the situation of everybody who's involved, and it is, for me, a very delicate case to handle. But however, as a representative of the people of St. Martin, I will do the job that I have been put here to do. Madam Chair, pleasant good afternoon to you and to the members of Parliament. I would first like to introduce my cabinet staff, which I have already done, and then I would like to make a presentation. You press the numbers. So, slide 1. Insight and discussion into the role and authority of the Ministry of Education with regards to the religious and or other alternative school boards on St. Martin. Madam Chair, I know that a decision was made to group the both agenda points. However, in my preparation, I have done agenda point 1 first and then agenda point 2 after. Okay? The authority of the Minister and Ministry of Education, Culture and Sports is enshrined in the following legislations: the National Ordinance Foundation-Based Education, the National Ordinance Secondary Education, the National Ordinance Secondary Vocational Education. In addition to the legislation mentioned, the following legislations are currently being prepared for ratification, namely the National Ordinance for Education Supervision, and this legislation will provide legal grounds to improve the supervision of education by the Division of Inspection, Education, Culture and Sports, and lastly, the National Ordinance Higher Education, which will ensure improved access to quality higher education. The draft National Ordinance Education Supervision includes proposed amendments in the national ordinances for compulsory education, foundation-based education, and secondary education geared towards modernizing the legislation as well as the synchronization of the national ordinances for compulsory education, foundation-based education, and secondary education. The proposed amendments include matters related to fees, private schools, authority of the Minister of Education, Culture and Sports related to safety and inclusion of CXC system. The draft National Ordinance Education Supervision with the proposed amendments have been sent to Legal Affairs for vetting, after which the draft law will be sent to the Council of Advice for review. The draft National Ordinance Higher Education has been reviewed by the Council of Advice. The response to the Council of Advice has been drafted, which will be vetted by Legal Affairs prior to submission to Parliament. Based on the National Ordinances, Foundation-Based Education, and Secondary Education, the Minister's authorities include, but are not limited to, the following: education supervision, the structure of foundation-based education, the education development plan, the education report, the health and safety of school buildings, and the funding of education, which is enshrined in the national decree regulating the funding of education. Education supervision. The supervision of foundation-based education and its soundness is entrusted to the minister. It is exercised under the guidelines of the Education Inspectorate. The Education Inspectorate and the officials charged with supervision by the minister always have access to the schools. The Education Inspectorate publishes annually about the state of education in general and the individual schools by means of an education report that is presented to the minister and to Parliament. Article 9 addresses the structure of foundation-based education. It details the structure of education, including student tracking system, number of teaching hours, vacation days, etc. This is also found in Article 6 in the Secondary Education Ordinance. Article 14 addresses the school development plan and states that the competent authorities must develop and submit a school development plan to the minister. Once amended, this will become Article 23 in the Secondary Education Ordinance. Article 21 addresses the structure of the education report and indicates it will be determined by the ministerial decree. This article is not applicable to secondary education. Article 33, the supervision of the health and safety school buildings is carried out by or on behalf of the minister and extends to all buildings in and areas where basic education is provided and to the staff of the schools and the pupils. This is also found in Article 30 in the Secondary Education Ordinance. As competent authority, the minister is responsible for the funding of public education. The minister can decide to fund bijzonder onderwijs, special education, whether religious or alternative education, upon request from the competent authority in accordance with the education ordinances and the National Decree on Funding Education. Higher education is being funded in accordance with the approved funding model for higher education, pending the ratification of Higher Education Ordinance and establishment of the related national decree. Having concluded my presentation on agenda point 1, permit me to address agenda point 2, which has now been incorporated with agenda point 1, which relates to the progress regarding reporting of incidents involving school authority figures and students to the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports. I will elucidate on this point by first sharing information about the steps taken by the ministry since 2015 to structurally address matters that relate to the reporting of child abuse. I will share the basics for the ministry's action, which can be found in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and the Civil Code of St. Martin. I will also share the acts that are considered child abuse under St. Martin's Penal Code, and then I will share with you the related education legislation in which the responsibilities of all agents within the school as well as the minister are outlined. I will conclude the presentation by sharing the process of reporting of incidents to the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports. As it relates to the matter of child abuse, it is important to state emphatically that at this point, that we are responsible for the care and well-being of our children and have a responsibility to protect them and report when we suspect abuse. In 2015, the Guide Towards the National Protocol Child Abuse was created by the Policy Department of Youth Affairs in collaboration with Court of Guardianship, the Department Collective Prevention Services Section, Youth Health and the Student Support Services Division. The protocol outlines, among others, a definition of abuse, risk and protective factors, role and responsibilities pertaining to the child protection against abuse, and reporting procedures. According to this guide, the definition of child abuse is as follows. Any form of threatening or violent interaction of physical, psychological, or sexual nature that a parent or other persons whom the minor under 18 is in a relationship of dependence actively or passively imposes on the minor, causing physical or psychological harm or threatening to do so. This includes physical abuse, psychological, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, including grooming and neglect. The guide is based on the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child, the Constitution of St. Martin, and the Civil and Penal Code of St. Martin. Let me see. The United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child indicates the following in regards to child abuse. Article 19. Article 19 addresses protection from violence, abuse, and neglect. It indicates that governments must make sure children are properly cared for and protect them from violence, abuse, and neglect by anyone who looks after them. In addition, Article 34 addresses no sexual abuse and exploitation. It states that children have the right to be free from sexual abuse and sexual exploitation. The Civil Code St. Martin determines by law that the Court of Guardianship has the responsibility to register all cases of suspicion child abuse and examine, report, and advise in cases where abuse of a minor is suspected. Article 1, Section 243A. That the informant's identity should not be disclosed. Specifically, when the informant has a professional relationship with the minor or its family, and the disclosing of the identity can have a negative consequence. Article 1, Section 243B. The person who took an oath of secrecy can report cases of abuse without being breached. That a reporting code for professionals and entities that details with minor is needed and can be made mandatory by national decree. The code need to include reporting guidelines, and further requirements can be proposed by the Ministry of Justice, Article 1, 243D. According to the Penal Code of St. Martin, acts that are considered as child abuse include the carrying or disseminating of images of children on electronic storage devices of sexual nature, all acts of sexual nature between a minor and an adult. The age of consent determined by law is 16 years. This means that a minor of 16 years old can have consensual sexual relations with an adult without this being punishable. Nonetheless, restrictions are applicable. The act is punishable in the event that the minor has been coerced by promising of gifts or money to actively or passively be engaged in or witness activities of sexual nature. Sexual relations with persons with whom the minor under 18 has a dependable relationship, for instance, parents, step-parents, or teachers. Willingly witnessing of sexual acts with a minor, grooming, befriending, and establishing an emotional connection with a child to lower the child's inhibitions for child sexual abuse. The Penal Code further includes kidnapping, harmful behavior that results in the death of a newly born or unborn child, physical abuse, and other behaviors that cause harm to a child, causing a child to be drunk, 15 years or younger, child labor, child neglect, child abandonment, severe physical injury caused due to neglect, and the refusal or failure to pay child's alimony as child abuse. Based on the rights of the child and the legal obligation to protect children from child abuse, education legislation details the obligation of the competent authority, agents of the school such as teachers and auxiliary staff, and the ministry for the reporting of child abuse specifically. Article 8 of the Foundation-Based Education Ordinance establishes the obligation to report violent and sexual offenses. The draft amendment of the Secondary Education Ordinance also includes this in Article 4A and 4B. The article states as follows: if the competent authority has a reasonable suspicion that within the sphere of a school under its authority, a crime against morality is referred to in Title 9 of the Penal Code, or the offense of serious assault referred to in the Articles 315 or 316 of that code, has occurred against or has been committed by pupils, the director, teacher, other staff, or persons otherwise under their authority, or third parties, they shall immediately report this to an investigating officer, as referred to in Article 184, first paragraph, or Article 185 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. In the event of involvement of a student, the principal, a teacher, or other staff, or other persons under their authority, the competent authority will inform the parents or the persons concerned before making a report. If the competent authority has reasonable grounds to suspect that a person entrusted with duties on behalf of its school or other persons has committed physical violence towards a student or against a person entrusted with duties on behalf of its school, the competent authority shall immediately report to an investigating officer, as referred to in Article 184, first paragraph, or Article 185 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. Before making a report, the competent authority will inform the parents of the pupil concerned, the principal, or the relevant persons entrusted with tasks on behalf of the school. Point 3, if a staff member, not being the principal, has a reasonable suspicion that a person entrusted with tasks for the benefit of the school, not being the principal, is guilty or committed an offense as referred to in the first paragraph against a student of the school, the staff member immediately informs the director, who in turn informs the competent authority without delay. If a staff member has a reasonable suspicion that the director has committed an offense, as referred to in the first or second paragraph against a student of that school, the staff member shall immediately inform the competent authority thereof. If a staff member is of the opinion that the competent authority has insufficiently complied with the obligations pursuant to this article, he shall immediately inform the minister, stating reasons. Article 30 of Foundation-Based Education Ordinance and Article 40 in the Secondary Education Ordinance forfeits any one of the authority to deliver education should they be irrevocably convicted for a crime against morality against a minor, as referred to in the Penal Code. Sub 2 of this article gives the minister authority to deprive a teacher who has been irrevocably convicted of a crime other than that referred to in the first paragraph, or who, when delivering education, supports or proclaims opinions that are contrary to the morality or involved in an incident to disobey the statutory regulations within St. Martin of the authority to deliver education. This would go into effect on the day on which the decision has become irrevocable. The process of reporting incidents between schools authority figures and students is as follows. Everyone has the duty to report a case of child abuse to the Court of Guardianship and or the police. In the event an incident or suspicion of child abuse in any form is reported to the Inspectorate of the Court of Guardian is immediately contacted and an incident report is drafted and sent to the Court of Guardianship. In such an event, the parents or parent will be strongly advised to report this incident to the juvenile police at the police station. The inspectorate takes reports of all incidents very serious and will act in its capacity to ensure that the proper and legal procedures are taken. To date, there has never been an incident of any form of child abuse formally reported to the inspectorate. Madam Chair, I would like to state that this case has been, I have made contact with the authorities, and this case is being looked into. Okay? Madam Chair, through you, I would like to thank the members of Parliament for the opportunity to give this presentation and welcome any further questions. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your presentation. I would like to take a 5-minute adjournment before we move over to the members of Parliament. Meeting adjourned for 5 minutes. Parliament. We just took a brief adjournment, and now we have just listened to the presentation by the Minister of ECYS, and now I'd like to turn the floor over to the members of Parliament in the first round. Please note, members of Parliament, that the allotted speaking time in the first round is 20 minutes, and in the second round it is 10 minutes. And the first member of Parliament that wished to have the floor is MP Angelique Rameau. You have the floor.
A pleasant good afternoon to you, Madam Chair Lady. Pleasant good afternoon to my colleagues here this afternoon. And of course, a pleasant good afternoon to our Honorable Minister and his support staff. Madam Chair Lady, through you, I would like to state that my questions are primarily geared towards Agenda Point 2. As we know that this agenda point came about due to an issue that was divulged by a certain media house, which sparked quite some controversy within our society. Everyone knows that when it comes to children, I am a huge advocate as far as children are concerned on all levels. So based on what was divulged, I too was very upset and emotional. Nevertheless, I am always one who will do my homework and then base my opinions on the facts as presented to me. So I did my due diligence and I contacted both the minister and the particular school board in question. And I got information that helped me to formulate certain questions. If we look at the presentation of the minister, there were certain articles, the civil code was cited, etc. And Article 123, 234A of the Civil Code stipulates that anyone who suspects child abuse can report such suspicions to the Court of Guardianship, in which the Court of Guardianship has the responsibility to register all cases of suspected child abuse and to examine, report, and advise in cases where there is suspicion of child abuse. Now, if we have followed what was put out in the media by the school board, it was indicated that based on the law and based on, I believe, their research and investigation that they did, there was no need to report based on the law pertaining to secondary schools. So my question is a little different in terms of the reporting, because the reporting wasn't clear in that as to who were the school board or which institution was the school board going to report to. Was it the Court of Guardianship or was it the authorities, meaning the police? So my question is the minister aware if the school board reported the incident to the Court of Guardianship? And are you, as minister, going to report the incident to the Court of Guardianship? And if not, do you have plans on doing so? And my question again is based on the reporting and to whom you report. According to the UNICEF report 2020 on the situation of children and adolescents on St. Martin, 68% of interviewees, which consisted of administrators, youth, and parents, were unable to name the lead agency mandated to handle child abuse or domestic violence cases. Over half were unclear on who to call regarding child abuse cases. In addition to that, the law states that a reporting code for professionals and entities that are working with minors is needed and can be made mandatory by national decree. The code needs to include reporting guidelines, and further requirements can be proposed according to the article in 1.243D. My questions are as follows. Is there a reporting code established? If not, is it in process? And if yes, how far along is this reporting code? In the absence of a reporting code, what is the current reporting structure within the schools when it comes to reporting abuse of any kind? If a child wants to speak up, who is the first point of contact for the child? With the alarming statistics just mentioned, what has the ministry done in recent years regarding educating our students, parents, and administrators on reporting these types of incidents? Please elaborate on these efforts. What is the status of the safety net project that was being carried out by the Department of Youth? The same 2020 UNICEF report on the situation of the children and adolescents in St. Martin has made some recommendations on this topic as it relates to this topic. This is what the report states. The Civil Code and Penal Code contain adequate provisions related to domestic violence and child abuse. Nevertheless, the required policies to ensure adequate prevention and response services have been in draft form for many years. Key to note here that this is an ongoing thing for years. Since all ministries have responsibilities in child protection, adopting and implementing policies are complex interministerial processes. It is recommended to develop a roadmap towards the adoption and implementation with sufficient resources of the draft action plan on child abuse 2015 with an update in 2019. The draft policy for preventing domestic violence, child abuse, forced prostitution, trafficking in persons, and gender-based violence in St. Martin 2018, and the Integrated Youth Policy Plan 2020 to 2025, as well as possible other draft policies. What is the status of the action plan child abuse that was started in 2015 and updated in 2019? Has it been finalized? If yes, can Parliament receive a copy? What is the status of the Integrated Youth Policy that is being worked on by the Department of Youth? What contents of this policy addresses harassment and abuse of minors? Please outline in which context this policy addresses these issues. Finally, what is the status of the policy for preventing domestic violence, child abuse, forced prostitution, trafficking in persons, and gender-based violence in St. Martin? If this is not a policy that falls under the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport, can you kindly indicate under which ministry it directly falls under, and does the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport play a role in the development of this policy? It is time that we do what is needed now to get the proper policies and laws amended. I have the confidence that this has the minister's attention amongst other very important things, and I for sure will be holding the minister accountable to the future which is in progress. I thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Ramu. Next on the speakers list, we have MP Melissa Gums. I'm taking my time so that you can set up before your time begins.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
It's
When
okay.
you have the best
Yeah.
tech gear, you know, everybody wants to borrow it.
Everybody wants to borrow, yes.
Madam
MP
Chair
Gums,
Lady.
you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon again to you, Krifir, and all those gathered here, and the Minister again. Madam Chair Lady, as MP Ramu mentioned, as I'm sure my fellow requesters will express, this meeting has indeed been called considering recent media reports of what allegedly occurred between the then principal of the St. Dominic High School and a young female student. But it is actually about so much more than that. It is about the authority of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports to oversee, assess, and control the establishments in the country that claim to have an educational purpose. It is about identifying problematic persons in authority positions and making sure that they are never given an opportunity to hold such a position again. Minister, through you, Madam Chair, in yesterday's press briefing, you explained that the Catholic School Board informed that they are not obliged to report their findings into the reported situation to the Ministry of ECYS. This came after I was made to understand they had previously stated that they would share their information. Their confidence in making this statement stems from the fact that many of our education laws have not been updated to allow for an expansion of the ministry's authority over subsidized educational institutions. In highlighting this, the Catholic School Board is not wrong, and we have seen that they're not from the minister's presentation today. But Madam Chair Lady, as my colleague MP Pantoflet very often likes to say, there is the law and then there is reality. The Catholic School Board, like all religious school boards in St. Martin and throughout the world, should hold themselves to a higher standard when it comes to their humanity. That's what the principles of their selected religious affiliations say they must do. But to hurriedly throw up the nothing to see here defense with regards to this incident and others puts me very much in mind of the Baradada quote, "Jesus is ideal and wonderful, but you Christians, you are not like him." Christ pulled everything into the light, the hypocrisy of the Pharisees and the ugliness of judgmental persecution towards the frail, the poor, prostitutes, and the downtrodden. These days, it seems, in particular, the religious school boards are more concerned with whether children are wearing all black shoes and whether boys are wearing their hair in cornrows, locks, or an afro puff than they are with the health and happiness and safety of their students. I cannot begin to express how upsetting it is that children are already being subjugated to outdated and prejudiced practices that are even now being eradicated in professional environments around the world. Wearing one's hair in its natural state, the state it grows out of your head, should not be a reason to prevent a child from attending school. That is a failure of policy on behalf of the school boards. Not having a specific shoe should not prevent a child from being able to take an exam. Madam Chair Lady, there's a certain amount of personal pain in being the one to initiate the request for this meeting. I am at most times a proud alumni of the St. Dominic schools, primary and high school. I have fond memories of my time there, of those teachers that drove me crazy, and those teachers that truly worked behind the scenes to help where they knew they were needed and who made learning a fun, safe, and progressive environment. But Madam Chair Lady, I'm here to say that what has allegedly happened at the St. Dominic High School and what has happened and will continue to happen at other schools, this time around is not the first nor will it be the last. It happened when I was going to school, between a teacher and a student the class ahead of me. It was, as I saw a self-styled lifelong educator say on social media, handled in private and everybody went about their business. Well, that would be the very problem that we need to address. I have watched that predator go on to have a good career on St. Martin and be embraced by men and women in our society and elevated to holding prominent positions. And Madam Chair Lady, it probably was happening when you were going to school, when the minister was going to school, when all of us have touched an educational institution. It will continue to happen unless there is sweeping systematic change, not just at a legal level, but at a school board and further a community level. And I'll come back to that later. Through you, Madam Chair Lady, I would like to ask the Minister what power rests with the Inspectorate of Education currently, and what power will they gain once it is approved, once the legislation is approved and ratified, to ensure that school boards and their relevant entities are following the law of the land, including the school's own requirements to report to the ministry. As well, Madam Chair Lady, if the Minister could share what other challenges face the Inspectorate of Education in executing their role aside from the law. As I mentioned before, the law is one element of the problem. What else is needed to empower Inspectorate to perform, to uphold the quality of education and educational institutions in the country? Until they are empowered to do so both from a management and legal perspective, they remain a toothless tiger, one of many we have had to endure since I was born. Madam Chair, earlier I mentioned the community level, and I maintain my stance that a shift at this level is critical to the type of change we need to see to protect our students now and forever in St. Martin. It is possibly more important than even the laws, because laws are only as effective as the people in the society governed by them. We are further hampered by the fact that there are certain incidents that are essentially crimes, crimes of morality, crimes of ethics, that are looked at here as that's just how it is. There are phrases that have been used since I was a child that are at their very core predatory. The most popular is "after 12 is lunch," a disgusting justification for grown men and women to prey on 13, 14, 15, and 16-year-old children, because that is what they are, children, carrying on an imbalanced relationship with a child at 15 and marrying them when they turn 20 does not make you any less of a predator. This type of behavior is what reinforces the confidence of predators in positions of power And it is something that only we as a society can collectively change. And that change can only be accomplished through education and awareness. It brings me back to a question that I've asked this minister before about developing and implementing an updated, progressive, and inclusive sex education curriculum that starts in primary school. A consequence of not implementing such a program is that children are not armed with the knowledge to protect themselves in those moments when they are out of their parents' house and thus most vulnerable. And to be honest, sometimes when they're in their parents' house and still vulnerable. Children should be made aware of their rights regarding sexual and emotional abuse and should know the relevant authorities as well so they can advocate for themselves at an early age. Through you, Madam Chair Lady, to the Minister, while it is not mandated for the school board to report to the Ministry, specifically the Department of Education, about the incident, the Civil Code and the Penal Code both highlight the importance of reporting this investigation to the relevant authority, the Court of Guardianship. The Minister mentioned that the authorities have been involved, if I understood correctly, but is there any knowledge that the school board went through this process themselves? And if not, would they be held accountable for not reporting this incident to the relevant authorities? And finally, Madam Chair Lady, can the Minister inform if, in the upcoming legislations, whether amendments or otherwise, there will be penalties to alternative school boards that are repeat offenders for not reporting and transparently resolving cases such as this, in particular regarding their subsidy? Because I find it real amusing for the ministry to be told that there's no obligation to report by a school board that receives subsidy, and there's over 60 million guilders budgeted towards all subsidized educational institutions in budget 2022. Approximately 15 million of that is allocated to the Catholic School Board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Gums. Next on the speakers list, we have MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and a good afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Madam Chair Lady, to my colleagues. A good afternoon to the Minister and his support staff here this afternoon. Thank you, Minister, for honoring the request to present yourself and your ministry to this urgent meeting on the points as mentioned in the convocation. Madam Chair Lady, to the Minister through you, like several of my colleagues, Madam Chair Lady, I too, of course, not only took note of the recent incident, but also in terms of the many comments with respect to there not being any laws on St. Martin, and we need to fix our penal code and fix our civil code as far as the Court of Guardianship is concerned. So, Madam Chair Lady, I am pleased that the Minister in his presentation went in to some of this, went in and starting at the highest laws in our land that deal with matters such as this, the Penal Code, and as far as the Court of Guardianship is concerned, the Civil Code. But then, Madam Chair Lady, if I look at those laws, and Madam Chair Lady, differently than some people might think, our penal code is a pretty recent code. If you look at penal codes, generally speaking, one that went into effect in 2015 can be considered a pretty recent penal code. Madam Chair Lady, I too have then, of course, perused St. Martin's position with respect to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, an international convention basically superseding our national laws and others such. And Madam Chair Lady, I think the question that comes into play, given another incident, is what happened to all of the policies and so that have been established. Madam Chair Lady, so much work has been done between the ministry and those responsible for youth affairs in particular, and the UNICEF. But then, Madam Chair Lady, when I look at the situational analysis on the youth and adolescents of 2020, and before that, there was one in 2013. And then I see questions regarding the approval of the different policies. And as one of my colleagues previously said, the 2015, a beautiful action plan regarding combating child abuse. I see the one of 2018 being mentioned, and then questioned as to their approval. So, Madam Chair Lady, I think what we should be asking ourselves is, why not approved? Because, Madam Chair Lady, to the Minister, if it's a matter of finances and funding, then we need to re-establish some priorities. Madam Chair Lady, the Minister has indicated, for example, that the status of the law on education supervision. The Minister has also, and I asked it yesterday, and I see it appear in the Minister's presentation, regarding the law on higher education. Like I said yesterday to the Minister, this law on higher education actually came into being when we assumed the country status. We were working on it before that as part of the Netherlands Antilles. So there is something not right when that particular law today is still in process, and it would be good to find out what is it with the law? What are the issues that we are struggling with? It can't be no longer one of having somebody draft the law. So there must be other issues that come into play, and I hope the same is not true for the law on the law on inspection in education, or the law on educational inspection. So, Madam Chair Lady, I want to ask the Minister through you. We have seen from a place that we oftentimes take over laws and policies, we have seen where the Netherlands has a youth law with respect to child abuse. Does the Minister, knowing what we have before us in terms of laws, the laws that I just referred to, knowing what we have before us in terms of policy, does the Minister think that that is necessary and could help in this regard? Madam Chair Lady, I mentioned, and of course I'm picking up speed as I saw your indication as to how much time is left. Madam Chair Lady, I mentioned UNICEF analysis on children and adolescents of St. Martin of 2020. I saw the reporting protocol for child abuse of 2015. I mentioned that in our penal code we have a child abuse definition, and I want to state this, I want to support what the, okay, thank you. So now I could take some more time. That was a mistake. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. The child abuse definition, and in now question in the view of the Minister, Ministry, and those involved with child abuse reporting, is there a need to be even more specific where this matter is concerned in our penal code, whereas it was on the screen in terms of what the definition is now, pretty all-encompassing, but again, in the workings of this law, does the Ministry feel there is any need for even a further definition? Madam Chair Lady, I mentioned 2015, the Action Plan on Child Abuse. It has been questioned in terms of its status, approval or not. 2018, the policy to prevent domestic violence and child abuse status. This one, it is stated it hasn't been approved. And the question would be why? Madam Chair Lady, I took note of the notification, of the information that foundation-based education law, secondary education law are being revised, and in it would come out stronger the matter of reporting. Madam Chair Lady, in 1999, the Netherlands actually adjusted, so they didn't change their foundation-based education and their secondary education laws. What they did was made one law in which the necessary changes with respect to child abuse were incorporated. So you got one law in which for foundation-based education, so primary education, secondary education, these changes were made. When I hear about the process for the laws like higher education, inspection law, then I am asking myself if it wouldn't be a better approach to make the changes that have become apparently necessary as far as child abuse is concerned, to make those changes ahead of the overall review of the law on foundation-based education and the law for secondary education. That's my specific question. And when we look at the collaboration and cooperation between St. Martin and the Netherlands with respect to education review, I think that's where the focus needs to be. The focus needs to be on the things that we deem it necessary to be changed. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It is clear, Madam Chair Lady. So in the law of July 1st, 1999 contains amendments to several education laws in connection with, amongst other things, the combating of sexual abuse and sexual intimidation in education. And on the basis of that law, foundation-based so primary education, secondary education, they talk about so-called confidants that are to be established, that position to be established. And so, Madam Chair Lady, very specifically my question, ahead of the overall overview of foundation-based education for the other elements and secondary education, can we not, if it is felt by you, Minister, based on, through you, Madam Chair Lady, based on your statements with respect to this particular case that we are talking about now, would it be necessary for us to get some of these changes one time? So not wait until 2-3 years when we change our whole foundation-based education, when we change our whole secondary education, but very specifically, if there is a problem, if the minister has encountered it to be problematic at this time, where getting account is being disputed, then should we not then, that's when you change laws, when there is an issue, and should be only when there is an issue. So that's my question to the minister as far as that is concerned. Madam Chair Lady, we had, and the more I look back, I ask myself if we have not basically more than go forward, digressed where this matter is concerned. And why do I say that? Because when I look at the policies and the task force, etc., that we have had with respect to care for the child, care for the children, then I ask myself, where are these institutions? Where are these institutions now? The task force, the committee, you name it. Where are they now? And what have they been doing? So, for example, if the policies mentioned by my colleagues and me regarding 2015, 2018, if they were approved, other than that is being stated, then do we have some type of report as to the workings of these policies? Or is it really so that these were never approved and thus never implemented? is my question. We had an action plan for St. Martin on child abuse going back to 2015. So what happened then, Minister? What is lacking? Where did we fall short with these policies being there on the table, with reports by UNICEF being there on the table? Madam Chair Lady, a focal point for prevention and combating child abuse, all of these are things that were put in place by St. Martin. So today we have to ask ourselves, if the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport feel that something is lacking, and before I go any further, I think what the Minister should try to explain as best as he can in this setting, how is the case in question, the one of the St. Dominic High, how has it been handled? So, Minister, so what I'm saying, Madam Chair Lady, I haven't heard the Minister explain his statements with regard to this particular matter like they were done in the press. So when I read the Minister's statement, I am not sure what to deduce in terms of this particular case. I see the reporting being possible, even necessary, but I get the information, at least from the Minister's press statement, Madam Chair Lady, that something ain't kosher there in the latest case. And I would like to know if the Minister, understanding the position he explained at the beginning of this meeting, what exactly happened, Minister? Not in terms of the specifics of the case, but what happened in terms of the reporting responsibility, legally, morally, you name it. What happened there? And then, Madam Chair Lady, the matter of just some time ago, the Ministry of VSA, and this my issue when it comes to having policies and not necessarily laws. The Ministry of VSA and Justice signed a policy to combat domestic violence, child abuse, and gender-based violence. That was in July of last year. Where was and is the role of the Ministry of Education in this policy? What is this policy all about? And does it answer, Madam Chair Lady, some of the questions that I had with respect to the implementation and execution of the laws? So this policy between the Minister of VSA and Justice regarding not only domestic violence, child abuse, and gender-based violence on St. Martin. Again, I ask the question, where is the role of the ministry responsible for youth on St. Martin in that particular policy? Madam Chair Lady, I think I have covered what I wanted to in the first round of this meeting, and in advance, I thank the Minister for his responses. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Next on the speakers list, we have MP Solange Duncan. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the SG, the colleagues. Good afternoon to the Minister and his support staff. Good afternoon to the people of St. Martin tuned in. Madam Chair, I am a parent. I'm a mother of a 9-year-old daughter. Many of us in here are parents. There are many parents on St. Martin who we represent. We all believe that our children deserve not only quality education, but they deserve to learn in an environment that is safe and secure. I don't think any of us could disagree with that statement. The Minister presented a number of articles that really spell out not only the authority of government, but also what is expected. To quote the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, governments must make sure that children are properly cared for and protect them from violence, abuse, and neglect by anyone who looks after them. So government has a responsibility. It is clear, Madam Chair, that the provision is there in the FBE ordinance to report incidents, but we see that there is an absence in the secondary education ordinance. Now, I would like to know, Madam Chair, to the Minister through you, What will the ministry actively do now moving forward as it regards to incidents of this nature, the nature that we have described here, especially because there is no provision in the secondary education ordinance? If we wait for a provision, Madam Chair, I think we'll be waiting for a little while. So something needs to be done right now. I think what we lack a lot of times, Madam Chair, is just a pragmatic approach to problems. We have reports, we got studies, we have everything. But just from a practical standpoint, if I am a teacher right now and I witness sexual misconduct, what do I do? What exactly do I do? Am I aware of what is possible? I am not sure. And I think if we talk practicalities, I am thinking on government's website, there is a button that persons can go to, a student, a teacher, they can send an email, they can send a message saying, listen, I witnessed sexual or other misconduct that is disturbing to me. That is a pragmatic approach to dealing with situations like this. Because knowing the articles of the law is not going to help someone in a time of need when an incident is happening in front of them. So for me, I need us to really be extremely practical and pragmatic. What I see now, and MP Westcott Williams asked, where are we falling short? Because I think all of us seem to feel like we're going backwards indeed. Right now, we are experiencing, Madam Chair, this demand for not only accountability, but transparency. And that, I think, is the key to us moving forward. We have to be transparent, and when I say we, I mean everyone, from government to the school boards. Everyone needs to be transparent, and they need to be open. And so I am asking that processes be made public so that people know and they understand. This is what we need to do. When this happens, the next step is A. When they send an email, this is who's going to receive it, and those persons are going to act. The culture of throwing things under or sweeping things under the rug needs to be stopped now, Madam Chair. It might have been acceptable 20 and 30 years ago, but the next generation is saying that the culture of silence is unacceptable and we cannot continue like this. And so there needs, again, to be a pragmatic approach. Article 30 of the Foundation-Based Education Ordinance and Article 40 in the Secondary Education Ordinance forfeits anyone of the authority to deliver education should they be irrevocably convicted for a crime against morality against a minor. I would like to know, Madam Chair, through you, does the minister believe that teachers convicted of crimes should be then allowed to be hired in other areas of the ministry? Because the law says that they cannot teach anymore. But then does it mean that they can take up positions in other positions in education? I would like to know the minister's opinion on this and whether or not that is something that he believes should be looked at. Madam Chair, the State of Education report gives a number of details on dropout rates and teacher absenteeism and performance. The St. Martin Education Review interim report and other reports have recommended that this report be made available publicly. I am asking again, Madam Chair, for the purposes of transparency and accountability, if the minister, through you, will give approval for the public dissemination of the State of Education report. And when can Parliament and the people expect to receive the report? Not a presentation, but the actual report itself, because it gives data that can be used not only by policymakers, but by Parliament, so that we understand the state of education and what needs to happen to change it. Again, Madam Chair, you don't have to be a parent to take this situation seriously. Now, we all have a part to play. Not only does government, but Parliament as well, because we have, and thanks to the minister, we now see the articles that need to be amended. So it would be prudent to understand if the ministry has not made any attempts as yet, then I believe that the Committee of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport should take up working on these amendments because it is crucial. It's crucial that we do something about it. And that is it for me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Duncan. Next, on the speakers list, we have MP George Pantaflet. MP Pantaflet, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the Chair, Fear, colleagues in Parliament, Honorable Minister, support staff, those that are viewing. Madam Chair, I want to thank the Minister and, of course, his staff for the presentation and the regards to the different ordinances that are already in place and probably amendments have to take place. Madam Chair, a lot has been asked of the Minister and his staff, and I will always start by saying this. We could want a lot of things to be done, but we all know from experience, if there's no stability, you can't get things done. You can make as much plans as you want, have as much great ideas as you want, or many great ideas as you want, but if there's no stability, Madam Chair, you can't get things done. One thing I like that I heard, I believe one or two of my colleagues mentioned, the issue of responsibility. Responsibility lies with each and every one of us, all of us. And some might not like this, but being a parent, my children are already grown. I have grandchildren, of course. It starts with us as parents, first and foremost. And then, as one of my colleagues said, friends who attend school or who you have a relationship with. So in other words, the entire society is responsible. And that's something I don't want us to miss, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I have a suggestion. If it had not already taken place, because I am quite sure that there's not an island or any other country on this planet where human beings live that these incidents have never occurred. So since we are part of the kingdom, and one of my colleagues mentioned the Netherlands, I'll come closer home. I have a suggestion, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister, that if it's possible, interaction is being held with other ministers, Aruba, Curacao, even include the best islands as to their experiences in these areas, and based on existing laws, if they're not in uniformity, how were they addressed? It should never come across, Madam Chair, as if these are isolated cases to St. Martin. But as I said, it happens all over the world, no matter how unpleasant it is. So that is a suggestion I have, Madam Chair. I read the lengthy release from the journalist who wrote up the whole report. And you know, St. Martin is a beautiful place, because I always thought when you put things on paper, especially these kind of things, you have to make sure you have all the relevant facts and so on from the ones who supposed to be involved in the matter. But I leave that for his account. Madam Chair, I have just one question through you to the Minister. How many of these incidents basically has been reported over the last 5 years, and what were the outcomes? So reports from whether it's schools or parents or whatever, and what was the outcome? Were there any court cases and so on? Were the perpetrators tried? Were they convicted? For the last 5 years, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Pantaflet. Next on the speakers list, we have MP Rolando Bryson. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. A good afternoon to you once again, to the Secretary General, my colleague members of Parliament, and a welcome to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports and the support staff, thank you very much for the very in-depth presentation, especially outlining pretty directly some of the questions related to legislation and laws and so on. But Madam Chair, before I go into any questions, I really just want to say something about the reactiveness that sometimes we have as a parliament and a society and a government. Madam Chair, today we are here discussing this matter, and let us be real about it, only because it ended up on social media or in the newspaper or in the press briefing, etc. That's not to say that you don't react, but why is it that we only react when something comes to the forefront? Madam Chair, as was mentioned earlier, we had a presentation quite some time ago from the Minister of Justice outlining the deficiencies in our laws with regards to the reporting of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, mishandling of minors, etc. And you get a lot of vigor in that meeting, and then you don't get any sort of follow-up either from the members of parliament, maybe the government, etc., until something blows up again. I say that to say I am happy this meeting is taking place, but I hope this is not a repeat of what we've seen in the past, where it's a issue, it's a hot topic, so to speak. We want to question the government and find out this and that, but then the role that we have as parliament, it suddenly stops. Because it seems like we forget that we think our only role in the Constitution is to question ministers, but we can draft laws. We have committees of parliament. That's why I was so happy to hear MP Duncan say, hold on, Minister, tell me what laws are deficient, and if you can't take care of it, in other words, just to paraphrase the MP, well, we have an education committee, we're going to deal with it. That's what I'm talking about. That's not being reactive to say when a topic is an issue, we delve on it in Parliament, and then it just goes silent and nothing actually happens. I hope we get real action. And I think this Parliament has shown that capability across the board. You know, when I see political parties that have been in this Parliament for many years, right? And I'll call the party name, United St. Martin Party, my former party. And exactly after they have lost their representation in the Parliament, all of a sudden they know how to draft laws. All of a sudden, hey, we have a draft law. Come, let me take a picture of you so I could show. You know the only member of the USP that ever drafted and passed an initiative law from Parliament? You're looking at him right here. Where was the legislative attention then? That is what I'm talking about. That's very unfortunate, because this is a very serious matter that needs serious attention, but then to score political points after you have no representation in Parliament to actually put forward a law, you suddenly learn about legislation. That's what I talk about, the reactiveness of some politicians in this country that has caused these problems. We bring up laws from 1999 and this and that, the Netherlands Antilles and so on. I mean, I wasn't in government back then. I wasn't in the Netherlands Antilles. I wasn't in the executive council. But if I was, I think I would do my best, like I do now. We have a banking crisis in this country. I'm waiting on the Minister of Finance. Draft the law, send it to him. We have an opportunity to deal with a health levy. Draft the law, send it to the government. You vet it, get it done. You know, that's the energy that I want to see from this Parliament, and we as members of Parliament need to take serious. Not just when the topic is hot, we suddenly decide we have to just question. I must say, I'm not saying that to say that any speaker today has not gone in direction. I think quite on the contrary. I think now we've gone beyond just, oh, this report said this, and, you know, I had drafted this law. No, I see some content. But after today, let's act on it, because the responsibility is across the board. Madam Chair, mention is made of Article 234A, for example. And when I read that article that talks about the responsibility, I would call it, of people in society to report these things to the Voogdijraad, I don't see that as a singular responsibility. That is a collective societal responsibility, which I can imagine when you have a civil code system. That's why you embed it within your civil code, because you want your society to understand This is the behavior we expect of you. This is what we want you to do when you encounter something like this. And that is a collective responsibility of everyone. The minister, the school board, the teacher, but also, Madam Chair, the parents. When are parents in this country going to also step forward and not use the type of tropes and the manner of just kind of brushing it off like this type of behavior is okay? The biggest and best form of education any student can get is the education you get at home. I am the man I am today because of Franklin Bryson and Jenny Bryson, not because of St. Joseph Academy and in Holland University in Amsterdam. I mean, Academy helped, don't get me wrong. You know, shout out to Ms. Derek. But I'm saying the key, the real education, the real upbringing, even after leaving school, when I encounter my challenges, the best teacher I got is Franklin Bryson. I go down Madam Estate and I sit with him, boy, Dad, you know, this is a situation. What do you think? How should we handle it? That part of the responsibility of the parents to also set those barometers in our society are so important. And Madam Chair, that's why I would like to ask the Minister, I know this may be something sensitive because I understand that I don't want to use the term investigation, but there are things being looked into about this situation or other situations. My question is parents reporting these things? Is there action from the parent side as well to say, no, if my child come home, I'm taking this serious, and girl, stop complaining, or boy, stop complaining, or especially as young men, what we face, even as adult men in this country, boy, man up, toughen up, boy, you're a big man. That's what we are told as men, young men and adults, that our mental health don't matter. When are parents going to start to be cognizant of that, especially for young boys in our country? Because this particular incident, if I understand correctly, may have to do with a female, but there's a lot of young boys out there. I can tell you, I used to be on a basketball team. And a lot of strange things I used to experience back then, but thanks to Franklin Bryson, that would say, no. That type of behavior ain't good. I gonna go talk to that coach. He might have prevented that. He might have prevented me from going through a traumatic situation. But how many parents are stepping in and understanding what's happening in sports, what's happening with young men in this country, and the scars that leaves to them when they become adults? Parents, Madam Chair, very important role as well. And if the civil code is saying that this is your responsibility, you can go and melt, but I would like to know and make a plea to all parents, when your child comes home with this type of situation, listen, and if you have that suspicion, take it to the Voc Daidat. But Madam Chair, in addition to that, we've also heard, I know this doesn't fall directly under the Minister of Education, this is more for the Minister of Justice, but it is under this topic. The Voc Daidat has been saying that they have limited resources. So when is the Parliament of this country going to not pass a budget until we say, hold on, no. We want a list of exactly what the Voc Daidat needs to be able to conduct their work. Because their work is not just receiving these complaints, it's also public relations. It's also education, it's also outreach. But every year we get these reports that they have it there, and we also as Parliament have the budgetary responsibility to make sure that they have what they need to be able to educate, to be able to sensitize our population to these issues. So I would like to know, Madam Chair, I know that this particular entity falls under the Minister of Justice, but perhaps the Minister can, in consultation with the Minister, tell us what is the current state of the Voc Daidat and their ability to help students and parents and also the school boards and receive these reports, and also help set a baseline for what is to be expected as behavior, public relations within the schools, education, talks, etc. What do they need from us as the one, as per Article 100, that sets the budget? What do they need from we, the parliamentarians? Because that's our role too. Madam Chair, I would also like to ask a question related to in the schools and this situation where I was very interesting to see that we have one piece of legislation, I believe it's the one for foundation education, and then you have the one for vote gazette underways, where there are so many differences. Can the minister please outline for the, maybe as a follow-up to MP Duncan's, I would say how specific I would like to see it. I would like to see a table with a chart of what is here that's not here, and that the ministry is taking action to merge. Because again, what I think is we need is action. Because if the minister is already working on that, then let us see what is already being worked on. So column A, this is foundation-based education. Column B, you have vote consent underways. Column C, this is what is missing. Because maybe column C is where we can help you. And that will also prepare the parliament to understand what the minister is working on. And very important, how long, because again, I'm talking about the reactive nature of things. Is it that when the minister in the presentation said that these laws are currently with the Legal Affairs Department, that last week he quickly went and said, boy, we got to fix this thing, and let me put it in there so I could come parliament and say, I'm working on it? Or is this something that the ministry has had its attention long before this came to the forefront? Because that context is very, very important. I would like to know if the minister can tell me, when did the drafting of this law begin? When was it sent to him for review? When did it go to the Legal Affairs Department? And when can we expect? Give me a date, give me a deadline, because deadlines push you, Madam, through you, Madam Chair, push the minister to say, I gonna get this done. Give me an estimate, give me something. December, November, January, please, Minister. Madam Chair, Madam Chair, I would like to ask, in the context of legislation coming to Parliament in general, being that we have the minister here, I think during the budget debate we did ask a question for an update on legislation coming from the ministry. Similar to my last question, can we please get a new update on where those are? I know, for example, the one for tertiary education, I believe, is being worked on. We need to know that the ministry is, again, not being reactive. Because, again, let's say tertiary education I just mentioned. If there's a problem tomorrow at USM and the minister is brought to Parliament, it's going to be said, well, he just quickly come in to fix something. He just sent that thing last week there. No. I know for a fact that this is going through the process, and we need an update on that as well. Okay? Madam Chair, I would like to encourage all within the public to really see what is happening with our children in society. Let's be mindful of especially the interactions that they have amongst each other, because it's not like before where I was in school and the only interaction I can have with my classmate is in the recess, you know, when I come and then we talk and we do things. These children now are interconnected 24 hours a day basically, because most of them have phones, they have TikTok, they have this, they have that. Let us be mindful on the effect of that as well and what is being communicated to one another. I'm just going to keep that very broad, because all I'm saying is the level of control and not the level of control, the level of oversight as a parent is broader than it's ever been. Because you don't know what they're doing, what they're communicating, and even somewhat of these predators are using those very same mediums, as various cases have shown in the past. You know, there's different apps and stuff that you can use to be able to monitor some of that behavior, especially from your younger children. I ain't saying you got to spy on them all their life, but there needs to be a measure of control in how much social media is being used, because predators do use that as well. So that would be my final call to the public as well. And if the minister can also elucidate if social media, the use of technology, the use of social media, are there any plans to also have oversight in that regard? And what I mean is, if you include in the legislation that suspicion is there, could suspicion include text messages via social media or pictures and video, etc.? Can that also be covered within the legislation that Parliament can anticipate? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Bryson. The last member of Parliament on the speaker's list is MP Rayon Peterson. You have the floor. Not a problem. We'll give you a few minutes to set up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My apologies. Yes. Good afternoon once again to the Honorable Minister and his support staff, to you, Madam Chair, to the griffier, to my honorable colleagues, and to those tuned in. Madam Chair, although I'm normally one to start quoting law articles, I feel that today that should not be at the center of what is going to be said. This is a topic that I feel is taboo here on St. Martin, a topic that is taboo, but that everybody is aware of. What I heard the minister say today, based on the laws, is that he wants to stay within the law, but there is a time where action is needed by a minister, the executive leader of that ministry. Because if you don't step up to the plate to protect the kids at this point, then who will? It is abundantly clear that a higher form of supervision has been necessary, and it should not be that we have to wait for a national ordinance, the zogenaamde LOT, to finish to only then act. Through you, Madam Chair, can we receive the current draft of the LOT, the lot that is on the table, to be proactive, like my colleague before me mentioned, in assessing if it actually covers the topics that we find are important as well? Because I assume that this would also fit into what the MP mentioned, because we can actually help with the legislation as well. The minister and my colleague before me mentioned Article 243A, A of Book 1 of the Civil Code. It speaks of the Centraal Meldpunt. The article literally states, de Voogdijraad, the Court of Guardianship, houdt in stand een centraal meldpunt voor kindermishandeling. So that means to say that there should be a central notification center, centraal meldpunt, by the Voogdijraad. So based off of that, I would want to know, through you, Madam Chair, has this been established, this centraal meldpunt? Because I am hearing the Court of Guardianship mentioned a lot today, but not specifically the centraal meldpunt that has to be put in place by that same court for specifically child abuse cases. If there is, then we should be active in informing the public of its existence and actually encouraging everyone to go and report the situation when they become aware of it. Because if not, then we would be in contravention of our own civil code. And it's anonymous. School, Madam Chair, cannot be an environment where it is simply not safe. What is even more troublesome to hear is that there have not been any reports yet, if I didn't mistake, that's what the minister said, but that this current matter is being looked into. The case that we're speaking of today allegedly happened back in April. And reading the media articles, it has been ongoing for quite some time, according to the rumors. Emphasis needs to be set, Minister, to you, Madam Chair, on the importance of Article 243A of the Civil Code, Book 1 of the Civil Code, and how we can centralize this within the community. That it's clear that an anonymous tip can be put in by the Centraal Meldpunt in order for them to investigate. Your identity is protected by Article 243B of that same book of the Civil Code. In light of the Centrale Meldpunt, as per the law, Madam Chair, through you, I also want to ask the Minister, what are the specific bottlenecks to get this Meldpunt working at the representative level that it should? Is it funding? Is it the Court of Guardianship? Do they need to take action? Do we as Parliament need to take action? Or does a separate department need to be established in order for us to basically execute Article 243A of Book 1 of the Civil Code? Because if there is, then I think that should be one of the first budget amendments that we have when the budget meeting comes up. But the law is clear. Any suspicion of child abuse is also to be reported. Any suspicion. So it's going to take us as a community as well to fight this. But then this brings me to my next concern to you, Madam Chair. The Catholic School Board. Because in my opinion, they have failed drastically in their tasks by not reporting this incident the moment it happened. The Catholic School Board is not above the law, and if they were aware of any case of child abuse or even a suspicion thereof and failed to report it, then they are at fault as well. Especially if the rumors of the cover-up were true. Then I am of the opinion that the members of the Catholic School Board should be prosecuted for negligence that resulted in child abuse. So my question to you, Minister, to the Madam Chair, is what did the school board do about this alleged situation? Was there indeed an alleged agreement reached with the concerning teacher? And was any part of that agreement that this matter should not meet the public's eye? Because like MP Gum said, this is not going to be the first or the last time. I agree with my colleagues. Education does begin at home. But when as a parent, you are dependent on other adults throughout these 24 hours that you get in a day to supervise the safety of your children, it gets a little tricky. Because by the end of the day, every single situation that happens is one too many. And we are all responsible for our children. Me, myself, I'm a new father of a happy 3-year-old girl whose face lights up every time she sees me. But she's 3, so she can't make any decision for herself. I have not gotten the chance yet to educate her on this specific topic adequately because she has not reached that age. She is simply too young. She cannot tell me what's wrong. The kids, to a certain point, depend on us to speak for them when things like this come up. Because we all know predators and groomers are known to convince the minor that they should not talk about this to persons, especially their parents. So with what face would I go home and face my daughter, knowing that other girls out there, at an age that she too will reach one day, are going through these exact sort of unacceptable situations, and I'm a legislator, somebody that's supposed to put in laws to protect them. When it comes to the school, the ministry has to take a more active role and not settle for what I heard in the press briefing yesterday, whereby the minister had a meeting or a gathering with the school board, and they told him that the incident would be reported. But then he understands from them the next day that they are retracting their statement and are one-sidedly deciding to not report it anymore. If that's the case, then the whole Catholic school board needs to be sent home. People with those kind of principles should not be in any role overseeing anything that has to do with children, period. The fact is, Madam Chair, that we have predators walking around on St. Martin, not only around schools, but all over. Persons, to my opinion, that should not be allowed around minors, and sometimes not even around women. These are the facts. I personally know of a case on the island in which an adult, a woman with a 10-year-old son of her own, was being stalked by someone working at a telecommunications company. This man used approximately 20 numbers to contact her at different times of day, showing up outside her house and taking pictures sitting at the car at 3 a.m. And you want to know the funny thing, Madam Chair? The telecommunications company is aware of this, addressed it, and this person is still working there as if nothing happened. I also personally know of another case in which a 56-year-old man was calling and texting a 15-year-old minor at 4 a.m. talking about loving her as a friend and getting very irritated and repeatedly calling when she did not answer him. Bear in mind, on a weekday at 4 a.m. These are facts. Both these cases are not even a year old, Madam Chair. This is why a sex offenders list is desperately needed for the whole island to be aware of what's going on. And I personally do not care about the identities of persons who commit these acts and their right to privacy. St. Martin is small, yes, but your accountability goes nowhere. To my personal opinion, you waiver that right to privacy when you commit these acts against minors on the country. Zedendelicten, as we call it. As men in our society, as fathers in our society, we cannot let these situations go by unnoticed as well, and definitely cannot neglect to address them, because it is always a topic of discussion on Facebook, on Instagram, in the social media, in the newspaper, until it actually hits close to home. And then what do we risk? Anger-driven but passionate parents, much like myself, taking matters into their own hands. And when that happens, we have failed as a society. We have not only failed ourselves, but most of our children. And this cannot be what the future holds for St. Martin. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Peterson. It appears we have come to the ending of the question posed in round 1. I would like to propose we take a 5-minute adjournment so that I can caucus with the, yes, we really need to take a 5-minute adjournment. Trust me, I need to take a 5-minute adjournment. So meeting adjourned just for 5 minutes and then we'll return. Okay, Minister? Meeting adjourned for 5 minutes. Welcome back, members of parliament. We took a brief adjournment, a pause for a cause, like we usually say. And I would like to now turn the floor over to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports for any remarks regarding the questions posed in the first round. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairlady. Madam Chairlady, I want to explain to the members of Parliament and also to the people of St. Martin that when I was in the press briefing and I was asked about the case, I did an honest answer. I answered I did not know. But after that day, after that moment, I did begin to ask all the relevant questions, check to see what was really happening, and then I understood that this case started somewhere in April, and it died down, and then with the article that came up, it became relive again at the beginning of the school year. I did not stop, and that is clear when you realize what I did. I did say I'm going to talk to the school board. I did go and speak with the school board, and that which I could have conveyed to you with my interaction with the school board, I did. When I read the laws does not say, Minister, you are the one to investigate. It doesn't say the school board have to investigate. The law talks about reporting. I would also like to say that Minister did not wait. I did not just wait, the ministry, we did not wait until this incident to do something about legislation. And I can go, I think, as way back as the beginning of 2021, the synchronizing, the amending of the legislation to make these reporting incidents possible has begun. And that is what I have also indicated to the members of parliament. So we are working on it, and I think I heard the suggestion from the member of parliament, Westcott Williams, that maybe we can just do an amendment to the things that need changing. But I also know that the distance that this amendment is, I think it would reach the parliament faster than if we were to start to do another amendment, because it is the same set of people we have to use all the time. At the end of my presentation, I made a statement, and it wasn't maybe clear enough, but the statement is that I made contact with the authority, and the authority is busy with the case, okay? I cannot indicate much more than that. And with that, Madam Chairlady, I would like to indicate also that within the next 2 weeks, we will have the answers to the questions that the honorable members of parliament have posted. God bless us. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. With that, then, members of parliament, I would then adjourn this meeting for 2 weeks and wish you a pleasant afternoon further. Meeting adjourned for 2 weeks.